Welcome, beautiful souls. I've got the amazing Sovereign back with me, part two of our very conscious conversation. How are you today, Sovereign?
Yay! I'm grounding myself. I've learned something new this morning. There's no lotus without the mud. So
That's it. Absolutely true. We always say that in our yoga circles because the lotus flower is synonymous with that yogic tradition and the flowering of the chakras. And we got to get down and dirty and get in the mud and throw it around and play with it and think it's all too much, and then realize that actually the lotus did grow from that space and it was all perfect in the end. And look at that beautiful backdrop for you in Bali. Looks like you've moved home, and you've got the gorgeous nature supporting this mission of yours on Earth. Wow.
I'm very blessed. Yes. Um, Everything also gets stripped away at the same time with it. So it's very beautiful. Nature is super forgiving and loving. And at the same time, everything got stripped away. So in terms of what I had to navigate with, which is just my own little personal story, but it's good. It's really meeting the 0 point within, around fear, around unresolved trauma that still comes to the surface, that still wants to be resolved. So circumstances and events get created that will trigger feelings, emotions, reactions from within that actually just all want to be found. But these ones were a bit narkier. They didn't have those many pretty voices. I'm
Yeah.
call them Archons.
Well, that's when you really know you're in deep transformation, because it's a paradox, isn't it? The deeper we go into those turbulent emotions and we allow them to run uncensored, the more we're going to rise on the other side of it. And I love when you talk about the hero's journey. It very much is aligned with the hero's journey. Not only that we bring the ultimate opponent to ourselves in terms of the macrocosm, but of course that demon-esque energy operates within too, in the microcosm. And it's all the stories that we create in our head, that we're not good enough, or that someone's doing something to us, someone's attacking us and we're the victim, and on it goes. And so we run the neural loops, and we can indulge ourselves in that wallowing, that it's everyone else and they don't see me clearly. And then we realize, hang on a second, those people represent me. They're aspects of myself. They could be unresolved traumatic aspects of myself from past timelines, or it could be a future aspect of myself requiring me to step up. And this is the fascinating part of this journey, that we are all one stream of consciousness. So as I look at you, Sovereign, I'm you and you're me. And that's very pleasant for me in this moment. Yes, I'm Sovereign. Yeah, I'm good with that one. And then someone bugs me later on today, and I think, hang on a second, don't you know who I am, and can't you see me clearly? And why would you do that? Why would you trigger my wound? And of course, that also is an aspect of myself. And as you say, that's the gnarly stuff. But that's really where the gold lies, because that's when we can use that as a platform for growth into higher aspects. So we're going to have a fascinating chat today. Look, the name probably threw a few people. I posted it on our Instagram page, and one lady said, "Wow, that sounds really wacky." And I said, "Well, it's as wacky as what's going on in in the third dimension." So we need to go there. We need to have these conversations. Aliens, Archons, and the Anunnaki. Now, they may be terms that aren't familiar with people, so I'm just going to break it down into basic terms. Aliens, well, we do know that anything alien is something that seems off-world, off-planet. I would say we're all aliens. We're all star beings having an experience somewhere within the galaxy. We just happen to be on planet Earth, but, in some senses, we're all aliens. We would, to put it in basic terms, say that there are benevolent, kindly, friendly aliens, and there are malevolent aliens who perhaps, and this is where we work through into the archontic energy and into the Anunnaki. We'll say that the archon is, I'm going to call it an energy. It's a dark energy that thrives off our loosh, and our loosh in basic terms is our fear and our anger. These beings sit in the lower astral planes in the fourth dimension. Fourth dimension is our realm of thoughts and feelings. Whilst we may just think we're 3D beings, of course, we know that we are energy beings. Thoughts and emotions are energy. So we have to really accept that, yeah, there is a realm of energy and that there's mischief makers in that energy realm. There's troublemakers. Again, like we've just been talking about, they're aspects of ourselves. They're aspects that if we take ownership for it, we're able to integrate it and alchemize it. And so the Anunnaki, and this is what was leading on from part one of our discussion last week, and you brought it up, Sovereign, and I thought, yeah, we've got to go there, about the creator gods. And the creator gods, we may class them as the Anunnaki. Let me just put up a little screen shot here that I took earlier today. This would be a depiction from the ancient Sumerian tablets of the Anunnaki, seen as creator gods, seen as sky gods who created the human being. You can see this as mythology, or you can see this as something that's absolutely real. It doesn't matter. It's about storytelling today, and about how through that storytelling we can receive codes and awakenings within our own cells and our own DNA and continue on our own hero's journey. That's really our theme that Sovereign and I have been exploring together. The Anunnaki, we've got two characters in the game, or three really. Anu is the sky god who had sons, which are Anil and Enki. Anunnaki is the term we'll give that whole family or energy. And Enki and Anil are also likened to Cain and Abel, and this may be a better way for other people to understand. And it's the two forces of light and dark. And we know in the biblical stories that Cain killed Abel. So it's the aspects of self. If we talk about the twin aspects of self, the dark can engulf the light. Or simultaneously, the light can transcend the dark. And this is the journey that is common for all of us. So who are these creator gods? Where did these elite families then stem from? These royal bloodlines, the blue bloods, we might call them, is something that's different to the warm-hearted, red-blooded humans. Who are the elites that are on the planet at this time that do boss us around? That it's said the Anunnaki changed or downgraded the human DNA from 12 strands of DNA to 2 strands of DNA. We have so-called junk DNA that's inactive. And yet I know, and I've been exploring with many of you in the My Health podcast, that we are becoming the supernature, the supernatural human. We are recoding the DNA. We are coming back online from a inactive or dormant state. We're coming online into that 12-stranded DNA technology. And so a lot of people are having all sorts of cosmic experiences at this time as that goes on, ascension symptoms, we might call it. So it's absolutely exciting. But as Sovereign has just referenced, well, everything's coming to the surface within that process. So Sovereign, have a little chat there, darling, about what your take is on what this archontic force is, the Anunnaki, and just how you see it playing out in the current day.
Wow. Yeah. It's all that sort of, early cosmology and that cosmogenesis of how we got here, who we are. I guess they are fundamental questions that are relevant to many people. And I think that question has really shifted a lot away over the last year and a half for a lot of people, where they're not that much wondering about what happened, 9,000 years ago. That's kind of like the foundational bedding of how we got where we are. And I've traced it all back for myself out of curiosity, because I went down the whole, whatever rabbit hole you want to call it, about 18 years ago. And I learned about the all-seeing eye and the 13 bloodlines and you name it, and the rah. It took me another 18 years actually, or 15 years to actually figure out that they were also doing a lot of unnice things to humans in the flesh. I thought that they were just, and kicking back and sitting there and smoking their cigars. Well, the little people are doing all the slave waged work. I've been really curious where our human disease comes from. We're not health, like as a collective species. We are, when we sit still and we explore what it would be like to be a naturalized human being, to be a natural human family, to be a human collective that operates in bioresonance with the planet, with life, with each other. We don't create pollution or waste, if we look at how we got to where we are, well, obviously we must have forgotten some things. And what is ultimately underneath all of that, both within but also through time, is what I see as a steady but surely increasing archonic influence that we actually have permitted and cultivated and grown. And I can go into great depth around that because I had the fortunate opportunity to have a lot of time to really feel this one out. And it's not just so much me, thinking things through. I do measure everything in terms of syntropy. So I go and find these analogies and these metaphors in nature. And what Archons really are is they are a mind virus. And just like any virus, they are ultimately here for life to become more intelligent, to up-level. And in a very simple form, we have an opportunity to remain victim or become victor. And really what we become victorious over is our own victimhood. And I think that that's something that we, under greater levels of oppression, that victor wants to rise, because we're not wired for suppression or oppression or anything that has to do with the degradation of our sovereignty. And yet we've been so desensitized over the last 100 years progressively with the advent of what I call deducation. That was really something that was brought in to create nice worker slave humans, so to speak. And then we've built an entire societal framework of that. And it's like, well, there's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing that is out of alignment. It's exactly where we are. And it's trying to show us something about ourselves. And this is a very long story that goes thousands and thousands of years. And it's actually rather cosmically orientated as well, because Terra, our Earth, is literally the center point of relevant creation. What we are playing out here, and this is just my own belief, so I'm not going to say that this is what I know to be the truth, but we've been taught and shown and really brought down to believe that we live in a godless universe that was just a big bang and it just exploded and it's all just so big and you're just so small, you're like a little ant, and what do you know? And so we've progressively been denatured and devalued in our intrinsic connection to life and to the greater patterns in the universe and the greater patterns of life, because it doesn't really serve, a good working class, consumeristically orientated society that's run by a bunch of psychopathic so-called elite families. Let me just say they're far from elite. They're like deprived of any dignity. Like, I don't know, these are the deprived of any dignity kind of humans. We've been really kind of programmed in ways, and we've done that also to ourselves, so that we forget everything that was actually natural. And then steadily, as more of that forgetfulness sets in, we are then feeling from within our human nature an urge to recalibrate and recultivate. But I can tell you, there is a lot to remember. And it is on every strata, and it is in every time zone going both forward and backward, there are things to remember. The future of our own beingness is here to be remembered, which sounds a bit weird. Like, how can we remember the future? Well, it's because time is a little bit of fantasy as well. And so we've been programmed with time, lack, scarcity, money, under a slave kind of orientation. And that's come from a very long time ago, all the way back to the Souvereign days. And what can we glean or learn from that? That's the big question. What's the relevancy of looking at those, those plaques? What can we? There's many books written about it, and how much of that is true? How much of that is actually trying to dislodge us again from our own supernature, our own wholeness? But the archetypal stories in those Sumerian narratives, they are just our own human stories. It's the lost son. It's all the same story. Have there been strong influencers during that early epoch of time messing with our DNA and da 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 da? Well, certainly they had a lot of knowledge on how to. The real thing is, where are we now? And what do we do with knowing that we came from a greater place? And how do we reconstitute that? I find it fascinating, that whole historical epoch of time. And I've dwelled in it for many years. And at the same time, I'm recognizing that what it was also doing for me is distracting me from actually cultivating me and my godhood. And that's really the reflection that is there. So these were not necessarily, sky gods that came down, and they were just all like sky gods with their big buckets and their beaks, and they were like being the sky gods and doing the teaching. And Quetzalcoatl was another one. They're all you and me.
Yeah.
So if we just read every story that we are those gods, that we had an internal fight within ourselves, whether we're going to enslave humanity or whether we're going to set them free, whether we're going to give them the empathy code or whether we're going to just... And this is our human struggle. Are we choosing love over fear? Are we choosing empathy over mine? I have to look out for myself first. And I see that that's the great opportunity here. And I see that every human story, including all the narratives around the so-called elite, or the psychopathic people that have lost all their dignity, their story is even transferable into my own story. It's just, are we willing to be curious? Are we willing to be open? Are we willing to learn? Are we willing to receive what ourselves are actually able to find in all of this?
Oh, Sovereign, so beautifully said. I love how you spoke to remembering who we are and the story that is inherent with all of us, in all of us, because this is fundamentally what it's all about. And remembering who we are happens in each now moment. So yes, as you mentioned, we can look at future selves, but that's just the human language that we talk about. The access point to those future selves or galactic selves is in the now moment. The access point to the past selves, all the way back to the sky gods, Sumerian gods that we may have bought the story and became the victim, and therefore felt the opposite of that spectrum was to have the savior, the God complex. That's all aspects of self that the access point to unravel this is available to us in the now moment. And so now is all that there ever is. And when we see the fantasy almost of what this whole cosmogenesis story, creation story is all about, then we're able to transcend it in a heartbeat, in a moment. It doesn't have to have any gravity. I mean, what does Earth do? It has gravity. It pulls us down. And yet what's available to us now is an upward spiral of energy. There's two timelines as I see it at the moment. The bifurcation is very real. We're seeing it playing out in the macrocosm. The words that have been coming through me is now the timelines are called heaven on earth or hell on earth. These are the timelines available to us. One has a downward spiral, a downward vortex of energy, and the other one has an upward spiral. And that spiral energy, we're shown through the galactic self. A galaxy is a spiral. The chakras are spirals. If we understand sacred geometry and we tune into that realm, that higher galactic realm of geometry and sound and frequency and vibration and color, we're able to decode into our human language via our DNA much easier what this process is all about. And so we bypass then the stories in our head and the neural loops and the mind chatter and the planning and the analyzing and the problem solving and the what ifs and if onlys and all of that gunk that features in the mind. And we go beyond what we'll call it the ego. We go beyond that ego that the archontic forces are really attempting to ramp up in us. They want us to live in ego mind, in that left brain, trying to figure things out all the time. That's why they're always selling us the stories of what the science told us, because, it's very complicated, don't you know? It's got to be complicated. And we figured this out, from extensive research, and we're in a laboratory and we tested this and we did this and we created this and this is the way and we all go this way. And yet, if we just remember who we are, it's so simple. Sometimes I feel it's too simple for people to actually grasp because we've been conditioned in that other way. And this is why I love talking to you, because it's aspects of self. We can't point the finger outside of ourselves. We may be tempted to, and it feels good for a little while to wallow in that it's them and they did that to me, yet that renders us powerless. If we want to feel powerful, and if we remember the true point of cosmogenesis, who are we? What is that creation point? What is that explosion of energy from the undivided realm into the divided realm? It's pure source code. We can't be anything other than the I am presence. And so we are all being asked to claim that. And Sovereign, what I find really interesting is that a lot of people say, how dare you claim that you are I am all that is, goddess, God, you're arrogant. And so again, we see that siphoning off of that divine will that we all have, that's a code within us. We see it being siphoned off in so many people. As you said, playing small. This is the programming that's been going on, playing the little I instead of the I am all that is, ever has been, and all that ever will be. I am the microcosm to the macrocosm. It all exists within me. And when I command that power, I literally change reality here in this third dimensional holographic reality, because it's just vibrating atoms. It's not real. It seems real. And sometimes it's nice to play in a state of being real when you're making love or you're dancing or you're eating. Yeah, you want to get into the texture and the feeling of all of that. But ultimately, it's not real. We transcend all the time, every single experience. We're never held, locked, stuck in any particular experience. And this is why we can't ever be victims, because no one and nothing can hold us down or keep us contained. We will always be in flux. We will always be in flow. We will always return to a new now moment and be able to recreate in that now moment. But you have to remember who you are. And if you're not embodying who you are and owning who you are, well, then who is? And this is where we cycle back to, what is that Archon energy? What is that louche energy that wants to literally devour you? Why did we? The questions will arise for many people, the existential questions. Why did we create this game? Why are we here having this galactic adventure? Well, I guess why not? Why not? We talk about the galactic night. The original people talk about the dream time. We dreamt it all up. We dreamt it. And so but we have to remember we're still dreaming. The dream hasn't stopped. We have to keep dreaming. And particularly at the moment, the words that keep coming through me is it's go time. It's go time. Now is your time to dream again. Make sure you're having plenty of rest. Make sure you're having plenty of fantasy, visualization, so that you're using your own technology, your third eye, to envision exactly what it is that you'd love to experience here in this earth realm. So yeah, Sovereign, I mean, such enlightening conversations. So many people reached out from the conversation we had last week, and I love their honesty, because they said, wow, some of it really went over my head. Sovereign's so advanced, but they loved it so much. And I want to speak to the fact that we're using, therefore, I spoke about the left brain. Let's use the right brain to understand, to feel through some of these concepts, and to let it soak into the very DNA and the cells within us. We don't always have to logically understand. As Sovereign said, we just simply have to remember. So Sovereign, what's coming through for you as we talk about these magical powers that we have to reawaken and create again? Oh, I think you're muted, darling.
There's a number of elements that have really stood out for me over the past years that kind of connected the dots up in being able to take more self-responsibility for my circumstances, experiences, emotions, feelings. And I already knew that projecting anything out was, my judgment says more about me than about anything that I'm judging. And that has remained true, because my judgment always is just a story that I fabricate about how I am wanting to keep reality stable in my neurochemistry. I call that my Fruppy land, because it's a realm full of beliefs and rights and wrongs and goods and bads, and this is what you can and this is what you can't do. And instead of calling that some divine realm of the heavens of my mind, I just decided to just call it what is much more appropriate, because tonload of these belief systems are just all flawed, and they're probably not even true. They're just to keep me safe, because I used to be a very traumatized mind, and nobody would say that I was. But that's probably with every human in the Western world. Nobody really thinks that when they start out on their healing journey that there is anything like, no, I had a great childhood. Or for some, they have blocked out a lot of the stuff that has happened, that was just so unnatural and so unhealthy. But through all of our early childhood imprinting, and every time we're not met with love, anything other than love imprints. So talk about fragility in a sense. We're very, very delicate creatures, because if we're not being met with love, we're being imprinted, and that will want to, it's like a dent in a car that will want to undent at some point. And the way that we undent as humans is that we go bah, 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 without asking, why am I yelling at you? Why is it that what I think what it is that you're doing is so wrong? It's because I'm emotionally reacting, because I'm acting again the story out in my head. And that's just an opportunity, really, first of all, for it to come out, and then for the self to reflect on, oh, wow, do I want to do it like that? So a lot of this is around choice. But I see that many of our belief systems, as we formulated them, are kind of like this construct of the world around us. And we keep adding on things to kind of fluff it up and make it nicer. And instead of actually just stripping it back to bare bones, to what actually is true, based on our human nature, based on who we really are. And what I discovered as I started to let go of all my Fruppy land ideas about, and the other thing is I had to be the king of Fruppy land, because there's somebody has to enforce the rules, right? So I was the king of my own Fruppy land, saying, no, that's not allowed, that's not allowed, and you're too white, and you're too black, and you're too big, and those shoes aren't good. And all that story ever was me trying to identify who I was in the opposite of what I didn't like. I don't want to be a police officer, and I don't want to work for the government, and I don't, and I don't, and I don't. And it really creates a database of information about everything that I don't want to be or that I feel I'm not. But I never asked myself the question through that process in the first 3 decades of my life. So what is it that I want? And what I realized is that I still am navigating some substantial challenges with it, because my will, right in early childhood, really felt suppressed and rejected and really stunned. So for me to say what it is that I want is very challenging, and it's actually very challenging for a lot of humans, because our will is our compass for knowing what it is that is a yay or a nay. It's the needle on our compass, and in most human beings, that compass has been smashed. And so we will turn in bendy ways to say what it is that we want, because that's what I used to do, without actually really saying what I want. And so somebody will say, do you want that? I say, yeah, well, that sounds kind of nice if you want it. And so there's all these little ways that I personally have avoided speaking out my own authentic will. And that has to do with that got compressed very early on, because it wasn't met from a place of love. Our parents didn't know any of this stuff. So we're in a transgenerational hand down of trauma, which programs humans to operate in ways and means that is not conducive really to our thrivality and our wholeness. But it's something that we're navigating. I'm not saying we have to, but you can decide that you don't want to, but then 10 days later you realize, all right, I'll get up and I'll do it anyways. So it's something that we are to navigate, and there's a great complexity to it as to how to reconstitute this wholeness. But it's really about remembering, and within the remembering, I mean the as in again membering. Because what happened, and this is where I can shine a lot of insight into this dark cabal and all the cult programming and all the MK Ultra, blah, 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 and all what they're all up to, is that they have taken love and they have taken human nature and they just poked at it. And it's like, what happens if you do, okay, so that creates that trauma. And what if you do that? And what if you smack them with a hammer? And when you put them onto the electrical shock therapy? And what happens? And so they know more about human nature and wholeness and divinity than probably any of us. But if we invert what the effects of all that programming are, then we can see that all that happened is that we got dismembered. And literally there in our neurological functionings, in our psyche, when we become traumatized through an emotionally intense experience that we can't process, a part of us encapsulates that memory, that story, and puts it aside, because otherwise we freeze. Like what trauma does in human beings, we don't know what to do. But if we stick in that, and our nature is not wired to actually separate that out, put that to the side so that we can keep navigating, then we remain frozen. And so what has happened for many of us is that we disassociated. We fragment, a piece of self fragmented of, and that is what there is to remember, to member that back to the wholeness of self. And that is a fascinating journey. And really, I see is that the Archons are, in most cases, in most people and most minds where these mind parasites live, they're the most wounded aspects of self. And the only reason that archonic presence has a presence on this earth is because of trauma wounds. That's the only reason. They didn't show up like, oh, that's a nice planet. No, they need a habitat. And so they're in the business of cultivating a bigger habitat, so that their fantasy empire can grow. But it would be interesting at some point to go into the difference between a host and a parasite, because you're looking at
Yeah, fascinating. I love what you said about their knowing who we are, our human psychology. Something really struck me as you said that, because I thought, why have we permissioned them to invest so much time and energy and curiosity and awareness and study of our human psychology and our human nature to then use it against us? Why then aren't we studying ourselves at that same degree? Why are we being lazy souls? And so this is all it comes down to. If we get our finger out and study ourselves at the same level, then of course, and use that energy of what we find and what we discover and that curiosity, and we use it to propel ourselves into that upward ascension spiral, well, there's no stopping us, is there? It's just that we've had it too good. We've been cruising around. We're like, oh, we're on this beautiful earth. Isn't she just pretty? We'll have a holiday here and swim in her beautiful bodies of water and dance upon the earth and all of these great things. And of course, that was perfect for some time, but there's that dark aspect of nature that is devouring us, that knows us inside out, back to front, that we are now puppets on the string and they're just pulling the strings as they like. And we're reacting to that instead of, to use your beautiful term, remembering who we are and drawing those fragmented cells back together. But of course, it's a perfect galactic cycle. It's a perfect galactic adventure. It's a perfect galactic game. We have to pay reverence to the game that we created. We are the creator experiencing our own creation. We wanted to become the contrast or the opposite. The original people in Australia say there is no evil. They say it's only the opposite. We had to come and experience the opposite. I get this deep soul knowing that we yearn when we're in the undivided I am Om space of all that is. We yearned to understand, to know ourselves, to experience ourselves. And so we had an explosion, or maybe we had an implosion would be the better way to say it. We had an implosion into these fragmented selves and we became the opposite. And of course, the opposite is often seen as pure darkness, pure evil, or what we see now with the Archon energy, the false light, the Luciferian light, dangling the carrot saying, follow me, I'll save you, and I've got all the answers. And when we're playing the little eye, we think, well, who am I to trust my own intuition and my own knowing? So, I better heed to that call. And off we go, leaking energy outside of ourselves and continuing on that merry dance of following the Pied Piper, leading us into the deeper enslavement, getting into this smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller box, and until we become transhuman and we're just, fuel and food supply for these forces. Again, as ourselves, there's still aspects of self. So we are never the victim. We can always arise out of that space. We can always face the demon within. We can always take the Excalibur sword, the sword of sovereignty, and we can always, slay the inner demon. It's a perfect experience. People say, well, you can't do that. That's aggressive. Oh, no, I can do that because all I'm slaying is the aspects of self that are no longer serving the highest good. And so there needs to be a fierceness at this time. If we're not being fierce, if we're not claiming that we are the light, and that we will rise, we will command the very potent power of the omniverse as the conduit of light, then we, at this crescendo time, we will allow that darkness to overtake us. And so the astrology wheel shows us so much because we played out all the archetypal energy. And anyone, you just only need to know basic astrology to understand the archetypal energy within all the star signs. You see it in your own sun sign. But of course, in the macrocosmic sense, we went through the epochs of time. We went through the astrology wheel and we became all of it. We wanted to become all of it. We were so curious from that undivided state to get into this implosion, this fractalized state, to experience the stories and the energy and the archetypes, and what would this feel like to be the victim, and what would this feel like to be the perpetrator, and what would this feel like in all of these different scenarios. And so why many of us are so soul fatigued, yet paradoxically enlightened at this time, is because we've played out that wheel. And so what's available for us now as Earth moves into the photon band, the huge lights coming at us saying, you can transcend if you want. You can move up into, many people say fifth dimensional consciousness is available for us. So many people I know are already dwelling in fifth dimensional consciousness and still observing here on the earth the other characters in their 3D antics. And I love your word, I'm going to use it again, we just remain curious, don't we, Sovereign? We go, wow, that's fascinating what they're choosing to do, and not bring any judgment to that, just allow every being to invoke their free will. That's one of the highest technologies we have as humans. That's one of the gifts given as humans, to have that free will and to play in this arena, to play the dress ups, to don the character suits, to do what we choose to do as the experiment that we came to have, our own experiment that we created. So we're always powerful. We are never powerless, even though we observe others' aspects of self, past life aspects, past aspects, however we use our words to describe that, still giving up their sovereignty, still giving up their power, still becoming louche for this Archon energy. It's all perfect. It's sheer brilliance, actually, from a higher multidimensional perspective. And this is what gets me excited, and I guess gets me through every day, is as that light comes in more for me and all my crap comes to the surface, it's like, no, just remember who you are, Carrie. You're okay, go forward, go forward.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, the journey is definitely intensifying. There's certainly, in my own experience, I noticed there's stuff coming to the surface that I thought that, where did that come from? And it's about the willingness to be present with that and to not fall prone to the story, being the allowance. There's so much fear that through trauma has a grasp in our energetic fields to command our orientations in one direction or the other. And that's really something that there is to reclaim, is the capacity to just bear witness, just breathe, just see for what it is. Is it really true? Is it really true? Or is it just, we all, as I said, me and my Fruppy land and all these belief systems and all these voices and everything that goes on there. Is it really true? And how do I really know? How do I really know that it's really true? Wouldn't it be nicer to just say, I don't know? Because that's what currently the conversation that I'm having in my head. It's like, well, I don't know. If that's what you think, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And it's not because I want to not own a process, but I've had a compulsive little creature inside of me that wants to know everything. And that then it wants to know that it knows by talking about what it knows, so that then it can affirm to itself what it knows. And it's all false identity. It's not who we really are. And so when I look at the sages and the wise women and men, they don't proclaim what they all know. They don't talk about how much they know. They have a sagey kind of way of talking about how they feel or see the world or experience the world. And so that's been my training, to come into that archetypal field of being, to the point where I feel that at some point the archetypal narratives may no longer be relevant, because that is the I am presence. It's not an archetype. That is just a sense of being in allowance and being in acceptance of both the human journey, the human experience, but also the simplicity of it all. And I see that because we've been mentally tortured by having to go through ridiculous programs such as the education systems, we have been wounded in our minds to such a degree that we require all these external identities and identifications for ourselves to feel safe. And we live in an age where that is on steroids. Look at Instagram, look at Facebook, and I'm in it with it. It's like I use my Facebook profile as a great opportunity for my own growth. I don't take it too serious, but um, I've found a lot of freedom by standing strong in my own ways of thinking, while other people think that was absolutely ridiculous, and that allowed me to free myself of all of these weird constellations that I seem to be having with people. And why am I having all that? I'm just me. Why does
Yeah.
my opinion matter? Like, can we have something different than opinions? And I feel that I'm coming more and more into a space of simply knowing from within, because I've experientially gone through the process of putting myself back together. And so there's less to fix out there. There's less to heal out there. Why was there stuff to fix? Because there was stuff to fix here.
Yeah.
As I wanted to change the world out there, because that was just the archetypal mirroring reflection of my internal world. And this is, I think, something that anybody can really take away on a daily basis in everything that they see outside of themselves, is that it has meaning to them, for them, from them, to them.
Love it. Love it, Sovereign. Let's have a look at this great question that's come in. So what about mirror work? I look at myself and stare and say, remember, I know, but it is very lonely place to be. Yes, and many people experience that loneliness. And so this is the transition that many are going through at this time, because as Sovereign's just so eloquently said, when we want to change out there, we have to dive within. It's all within, because out there is just the reflection. And so at that point, do we then experience that I'm the only one? No one sees me clearly. We may be tempted to believe that, but that would then drive us back into victimhood. Rather, we can see I am everyone and everyone is me, and I am never alone in this space. Mirror work is so great, because when you look deep into your own eyes in the mirror and you say, I love you no matter what, and you might laugh at yourself and you might say, look, actually, I don't love you. You know, the next thought that comes up is, you're a lazy sod, or I don't like what you've done with your hair, or geez, you need to lose some weight, or you need to put on some weight, or whatever the narrative is. But you just turn up for yourself every day and look in the mirror again and look in your eyes and say, oh, I really love you. I truly love you. And then over time, you're okay with that. You're okay with that. It's that radical self-love. I mean, it's such a generic thing now, we say in spiritual circles, but it's like meditation. It's because it works. There are some simple things that absolutely do work, and radical self-love is one of them. Loving yourself no matter what. So you might think you're a loser. That's okay. You can love the loser within yourself. Why not be a loser? Why not be all of it? Why not just make peace with all the different aspects of self, all the characters that show up and have shown up and are about to show up within you? Why not just be an open conduit for whatever wants to rush through you in every now moment? And when we remove the judgment of that, it's such an exciting place to be. But I would say, transform if you can, and you may not be able to for some time, but you may come into transforming that loneliness and start to have conversation with multidimensional aspects of yourself. And this is what's available to us at the moment. We spoke right at the beginning of this chat about the 12 strands of DNA coming online. What I'm experiencing both within myself and with a lot of our students and clients is that they're having conversations with, and this is why I put the alien through the alien card in there as well. We might call it alien aspects, galactic aspects, angelic forces. Doesn't really matter what term you give it, but it's a part of you that's communicating with you from a future timeline in the now moment. Okay, that all sounds like a big paradox. If you might need to take that in with another part of you, not your logical self. But that's really what's occurring at the moment, and that's what's available. And, I live alone just with my dog, but I feel so connected, not just with the humans on the planet, but with those galactic selves. There is a whole team that's available to you. This is where we start to explore multidimensionality. This is where we realize that the next stage in the astrological wheel is to embody those galactic selves. To someone said before about dancing it down, anchoring it down. It was such a good comment, because that's what we're doing. We're anchoring it down. Ascension doesn't always mean getting out of here. At the moment, we need to remember this key code: anchor to ascend. We anchor it down. We grid it into the iron core, crystalline core of Mother Earth, the telluric realm, the 2D realm, we're the 3D, but anchoring the higher dimensions. It's all coming into oneness and unification. This is what's available to us at the moment. I just find it beyond exciting, and it's challenging, obviously, to put these concepts into words. So I'm grateful that you know, people who are listening and the great comments that are coming through, you know this. You're able to interact with us, and you know this. There's parts of you that are activated, that see it so clearly. So yeah, amazing, guys. Keep the comments coming in and keep the questions coming in as well, because it helps us to kind of know where to steer the conversation, and maybe what's relevant at the moment. What are we all going through? Because we're all mirrors of each other. Particularly, I find at the moment, and it's because it's operating within me, is there's a lot of universal grief going on. So we're grieving for old Earth as we move into new Earth. We're grieving for old aspects of self that we now need to say, hey, thanks for being there with me this whole time, but you're not coming into the next leg of the journey. But you've almost broken up with aspects of self, like you've broken up with, you know, romances in the past. It can really be that experience. The universal grief too, is so many people are choosing to give up their sovereignty, who are passing over because of choices that they've made that have created, you know, complications in their physical health. People who are suiciding at the moment. You know, I've had a friend earlier this week that chose to take her own life. There's so much that's going on, and how can we keep purging all of this grief and all of this trauma? How can we just be here as that conduit in every now moment, saying, move through me, move these emotions through me, move this energy and motion through me. I will embody whatever space wants to come. I will not censor myself. You know, why is censorship going on out there in the macrocosm? Well, it's to show us, don't censor yourself, don't censor your feelings, don't censor everything that you know, or as Souvereign so beautifully said, you don't know. That's a space to embody as well. I don't bloody know. I don't know what's going on. I'm so confused. But in just anchoring into that, and in sitting in whatever that frequency feels like, paradoxically, and this is always to do with any consciousness pathway, there's always a paradox. When you don't know, when you embody you don't know, then you do know. That's the paradox, always. Yeah.
So good. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, there's just so much to unpack around how these internal dynamics function within our, what I call the internal landscape, and the way to put ourselves back together. It's really quite funny that, well, for me personally, having looked in all sorts of spiritual corners for decades, and then I actually started just getting really real with my feelings and no longer censoring my feelings and actually feeling my feelings. Is, you know, many probably know that the world of men for men is giving a different flavor of the repression and suppression of expressing how they're feeling. And so I came out of that same, it's not something that was enforced, like men don't cry or men don't, you know, talk about their feelings. It's just, if it doesn't get forelived, in front of you when you're young, then you're not, it doesn't become part of your mechanics and your operational norm. And so I had to learn that. And it was fascinating when I stopped. Well, I didn't even know that I was stopping myself from feeling my feelings. But when I started to allow myself to feel my feelings and to actually go really within it, I had a very inquisitive mind to work out that our human bodies are wired to not make it very complicated for us to resolve our unresolved, to heal our trauma. But we have to kind of understand how the body functions and how it does that, how it performs a function with purpose, and what the pathways on that internal landscape are for that full reintegration to come about, which can be best described as inner work. And these aspects of self, in my experience, through the study of the MK Ultra programming and all of that sort of stuff, I worked out that one of the most efficient ways to reintegrate any aspect of self, or even when you have a random thought coming up that is self-abusive, that is projective, or it is judgmental, or it is, you're like, wow, this is a real frequency of, the whole world is against me. One of the things that I've started to do, and it takes willful dedication, just to ask its name. So don't take your own thoughts as your own thoughts, but when you are in the awareness, like, well, that's a weird thought, just right behind it to say, and who are you? What is your name? And you'll be surprised that when you, with genuine, authentic curiosity and openness and willful attention, are willing to come into awareness. So it's not like, there's a negative thought. What's your name? I'm gonna banish you from my Fruppy land. Now, it doesn't work like that. Only love will actually allow a wounded child to feel safe enough to actually speak and reveal its story. So it's a very delicate internal landscape navigation, but it's very, very relevant. And just simply asking the name of some of these random weird things, that because they all want to be found.
Yeah.
Because we're wired for wholeness. So we're all wired to become ready for this ascension piece, for the download of these energetic.
Yeah. Oh, I just have to say, what's coming through,
we're gonna find some challenges, and it's gonna get a little bit rougher because we're gonna have more energy that brings more of this stuff up. But if we don't know how to reintegrate that, then we're gonna find that that it may just take longer, which is fine as well. It's just that it doesn't have to take that long, and of course it still takes long. And I was just saying to Carrie earlier before we got on, it's just like, my God, I can't believe that this is what it takes, because I have got stuff coming to the surface, but I can actually ask its name. I can be present with, okay, so this is going on for me. Where does that come from? What is it related to? What is the story, and what is the memory, and really particularly, what is the name associated to this part of self? What's the sound? Because it's not always Daniel or Frederick or Patricia or Karen, or it could just be, Tile. And then you're like, wow, what's Tile? Just stay open and curious, because your cells are always working with you. So they're only going to give us what we can actually receive. They're not going to give us what we can't hear or respond to. And so when Tile is given, and you're like, okay, well, that's interesting, Tile. When we accept and welcome that, we find that Tile is actually a stepping stone to another sound, which becomes a stepping stone to another sound. And what these sounds do is they are neurochemical associative bridges between where you are and where the trauma is really hidden and veiled and tucked in the subconscious. And so sometimes we get a direct line of communication, or at least I do. And I ask a sound, and boom, there it is. And I get access to the memory instantly. And sometimes it's just a stepping stone process of getting, because these are all early childhood memories, and many of us don't remember. Well, first of all, we don't remember half of what we did experience, and then the half that we do remember, we don't even remember accurately, because it's all going through filters of our own trauma and imprinting, and so there's a lot there that is missing. But the funny thing is that the body recorded everything. And so if you are willing and using your will to come into awareness, and it's a process of surrender. It's not like I'm willing access. I try to do that like that as well. and I slayed a fair few demons. But then later on, I also realized I think there is a more love-filled way to navigate this process, because my greatest demons and my darkest archons, I've channeled them, so I know what they're like. They're robotic AI. It's not sexy.
Yeah.
But it turned out that that was a relevant narrative for me, the whole archonic storyline, to actually find a part of myself that was the opposite, that was wearing that mask.
Yeah.
And that has to do with that archonic presences. Everything in life is performing a function with purpose. Even archonic influences are performing a function with purpose. We can just question the function. Well, in relationship to that taking place in our internal ecosystem, our trauma fields or wounds or spaces or unresolved emotional imprinting are a habitat for those energies, but they can only be there to serve a function with purpose.
So good. It really came through before when you were talking about the inner child, and there was something in the way that you said it at the time, and I saw so clearly that we are locking our own inner child into a dungeon, or we might say into a tunnel. And of course, what are we finding out more and more and more about this multi-billion-dollar industry of children in tunnels and their life force being inverted, and the total horrors that are going on our planet. And so we feel powerless to know what to do in those spaces, because all we want to do is rush in and save every single child on the planet. And there was something about the way that you said that, and I saw it so clearly, that it's our own inner child locked in the dungeon. Maybe we've thrown the key away. Maybe we need to find the key and release that inner child from the dungeon, from the tunnel, and say, come with me now, come with me. I'm not going to shut you down anymore. I'm going to let you have your say. I'm going to let you lead, because you're the magical, mystical one who remembers who you are. With enough of this adulting, enough of this trying to fit into systems. So many beautiful comments coming in, but somehow, Sovereign, we've already got to an hour. So let me just find, there were some great questions that came through, because I know otherwise we'll just rave on all day. So good. So can you talk about the line portal coming, opening up to us on the 8th, how we can use the time to raise our vibrations and manifest peace and positive action? Yeah, beautiful question. Well, really just embody the archetype of the lion. What does that mean for you? What it means for me is to get up and roar, to open the throat chakra, to speak truth. People say, well, I don't have many people on my social media and no one's following me. But we have to remember that when we speak, we create spells. Now, those spells can either be great spells or they can be destructive spells, but you have a technology in your throat chakra to be able to speak what's in the heart. It bubbles up from the heart center and comes out via the throat chakra. And even if no one's listening per se, it adds frequency, vibration, and energy to the unified field. So it rearranges the hologram, it rearranges the atoms within the hologram. So yeah, I would be getting up and roaring at the moment. Being the fierce lion, we talked about being fierce. Why are we scared of being fierce? This fierceness is coming at us. Why can't we stand up with our own ferocity at this time? Why are people scared? Someone said to me the other day, I'm asking for a friend, meaning they're asking for themselves, like, how's anger serving us all? It's like, yeah, no, anger serves. There's exquisite beauty in anger. Holding anger won't serve you because it becomes toxic. But sacred rage, to say, I do not consent, is a beautiful and exquisite experience. It's raw, it's potency, it's power that runs through you. So I would use the Lionsgate portal for that. And I love the part that you've asked about the vibrations and manifesting peace. Well, remember always, the human technology is so powerful. Even if we've only got the 2 DNA strands active at the moment, dare say, or activated DNA strands of the people listening, that doesn't mean you're better. We're not talking to your ego. It's just, yeah, you've done the inner work. You've gained certain awareness or consciousness. So use your technology, use your envisioning technology out of your third eye. And this is why we have to be laying down in fantasy dream world a lot, like the original people taught us. Get into dream time, project the dream that you want to experience. Don't be told what to do. You stand up and you say, this is what we're creating. I'm creating peace on earth. I'm creating heaven on earth. I'm projecting my visions. I'm getting into fantasy. I'm daydreaming. Do it for hours and hours on end. You are being more productive if that right, a left brain wants to say, well, you're not doing anything. Say, no, actually, I'm being more productive because I am creating a directional flow to love and to joy and to peace. So amazing. Another great question. Curious questioning. Love this. It's also been my approach. Any question idea to share with people to prompt divergent response from the fear frequency? I think we sort of just covered that, but I'll let you have a little riff on that, Souvereign.
Yay. Yeah, I'm just sending you here a little link if anybody ever wants to listen to some of the things that I have talked about in the past. It just brought it up to mind about the children and the reflective nature of these stories about tunnels and what's going on in that reality, and what it's really just offering us on an individual level, because we're each individually here for our own growth, our own restoration of wholeness, our own hero's journey, our own soul's journey. And so the entire universe around us is a kind of theatrical production of immaculate proportions, showing us opportunities for our growth, for our giving us access to, and we're giving ourselves access to it by willfully choosing. But it's amazing to see that there is a reflective nature out there that we've never been taught. I was fortunate enough to get that from my indigenous grandmothers, and be really steeped and really for the first time really raised at the age of 32, to become raised in consciousness by recognizing the infallibility of this Western mind and the compromised state that it functions on, and how much it renders information to. So yeah, it just brings it down to like a redundant place in oftentimes, just so that it can be understood, which is the whole scientific, I call it the glorification of mind. And it's just a phase and a period that we're going through, which is then to awaken the dreaming of the heart to come out again. And so I feel really attracted to relate more around what's playing out in our external world, and how we can find the corresponding narratives in our internal landscape, and going down that timeline and finding out where the injustice took place, where the rejection took place, where the abandonment took place, where the shaming took place, where we got programmed with this false idea around death that is a very lacking concept in the Western mind. And to really start learning that there is a Western mind and there is an indigenous mind. And the indigenous mind is one that is a whole body mind. It is a mind that gets informed by the heart, by the cells. It has a capacity to listen and be interactive. Our Western mind is very much frontal lobe orientated. That's performing a function with purpose, but it's also keeping many people stuck in little boxes, without knowing that there is a whole world in here, which is the whole world that is out there. And I'm just inviting anybody to free themselves up more, to expand their, just give yourself options. This is one of the things that I recently really learned, is that I've given myself a lot of more options than what I was given, but just give yourself more options. And you don't need to know what the options are. Just say it to yourself, I am willing options. Just tell yourself, because the cells, oh, she wants options. Okay, options on the menu. And the options will start becoming available because we will it. I mean, we can talk about the will in greater depth, because it's one of the most misunderstood words and the most powerful words that I think we can use for the restoration of our own sense of sovereignty and our sense of direction in our lives. But we can literally will these things.
Yeah, beautiful comments coming in. I was about to say that as well, Tina. I love that, Sovereign. You know, being the commander, invoking the divine will as yourself. Often people feel that the divine God, goddess, source is outside of self. No, it is self. It is self. You're not being arrogant to claim that. And now is your time to claim this. It is absolutely time. I'll just go back to this amazing question. As my frequency heightens, so too does my exposure to the dark. Why is this, and how am I projecting this based on that theory that you create your own reality? Well, because you're integrating aspects of self that were always there, that just you hadn't paid attention to, and so it's just showing up for you. It's not real in one sense. Always know that. Nothing is real. This is a hologram. So you don't need to be frightened of that darkness. But this is why we're having this conscious conversation today about the Archon energy, about the Anunnaki, about the malevolent aliens, because we need to identify the characters in the game. If we don't identify the characters in the game, then we're just simply continuing to run around blind and not really perceiving the truth of who we are. So we're making peace with those darker aspects of self that are showing themselves. That does not mean that you have to enjoy it or you condone it, but on a higher multidimensional aspect of yourself, the one who is simply the observer, who does not label right nor wrong, good nor bad, that just accepts what is, that part of yourself is completely at peace. And I would go as far as to say that the highest conscious aspect of self is bubbling with joy, even as these dark forces are coming at you, even at these shape-shifting reptilian forces that are coming at you. There's a part of you that's so curious, to use Sovereign's word again, so curious and so enamored by your own creation and your own experiment. And so that does sound like a paradox, I know, but I believe we need to go to that place where we're okay with it all and it has no power over us. Therefore, we can just play in this arena, in this third dimensional reality, and not take any of it seriously. And I feel what goes on is where the Archon forces get us is that they dangle the fear carrot all the time, and they use the death card all the time to make us give up our power. So you've got to go so far to know that you're okay with death, that there is no death. You're just transitioning from one realm, one frequency bandwidth to another. Nothing can have power over you. Therefore, then you truly become sovereign. You truly become a power unto yourself. And you can dance with the devil. You know, why do we say that term, dance with the devil? It's in our language. Yeah, dance with the devil. What has the devil got to say? And then go, cool. Devil's knocking at the door. You can answer the door, but you don't have to invite the devil in. You go, thanks for your feedback there, and off you go, and then reclaim who you are again. But this is the realm of polarity here. So the darkness, this is the realm where the darkness or the false light is going to show itself. And boy, is it showing itself at the moment. Well, that's really fascinating, Remain curious.
One of the things that I'd like to add, Carrie, is that all of that darkness and all that, so everything in life, and I share on this in the course in Syntropy extensively, but this is just out of nature, out of life, is that everything in life, with the emphasis on everything, is performing a function with purpose. And we can just question the function. We come from a world where we've been programmed and trained to believe that what we know is what we know, and this is how this works, and this is how this works. And the truth is, when we apply that in nature, we actually don't know. But we can observe what nature is doing. We can observe what is happening in our world, and we can question the function. And if the function is always to serve life, then we can remove ourselves first from the judgment that, it's a bad thing. No, well, it's performing a function with purpose. So what is the function and what is the purpose? If we understand more about how our human nature wants to reconstitute its own wholeness, which is a fascinating realm in and of itself, but our bodies are our greatest allies. we emotionally react outside of our control. We don't have no control over it, but it's our body giving us an opportunity, the wholeness of self, to look within to see what's going on. And it's not saying, look here. It's like, well, here's an opportunity. And so we have learned to judge our emotional reactions as something bad. And then we go and shame ourselves on over that. And that doesn't work. And so bringing in that question around the curiosity of, so this is performing a function with purpose. Well, I don't know what the purpose is and I don't know what the function is, but I am willing to come into awareness. So surrender your mind and be willing to simply allow the awareness to come to you. And you start developing a level of communion with your cells, with your somatic intelligence, that for the first time you're making yourself available to it. Meanwhile, it has been trying to communicate its entire lifetime. Unconditionally, and in unconditional love is always just giving us what we could unpack. But what we've done is we've taken it as, stuff that are like hot coals and we need to throw them out or we need to project it onto other people. It's all an internal conversation. And so
that's a big one, isn't it? The projection onto others. And Sovereign, we could have a whole podcast about that. So
good. Let's do it again. This is great.
So tempting to blame everyone. So look, yeah, we're having a great convo. We've already gone an hour and 15, and thank you guys. Thank you for all the beautiful comments. And we're doing this together as one stream of consciousness. We feel your energy as it comes through the live streams, and this is why live streams, I feel, are the new way at the moment. So we can navigate the terrain together, and remember, you are us and we are you. So many times we're also channeling your knowing and your frequency and your thoughts as we talk. And we don't need to be frightened about that because we're all one. You'll know when to guard yourself against energy that's, not coming from love. Otherwise, you can keep your portals wide open so that we can all go through this transition into the fifth dimension together. So thanks again. I am not going to get all these comments coming in because I'll sign off now. But Sovereign, any last words? We just want to say thank you to Sovereign and also to Shay from Earth Heroes TV. Are we streaming through there today? Have we got that in place yet?
So yeah. That's where it all gets hosted for those that are not. Because we're going to be diving into some of the topics that not necessarily can live on YouTube land. And that's fine too, because there's new avenues rising up, and Earth Heroes TV is a beautiful platform that is really worth supporting in terms of what its aspirations, its ideals, and its focus is. And it's got a beautiful mix of the care for self, the care for body, the care for earth, the care for community, and then the care for truth. So there's a lot of goodness there. And just in closing, I just feel at some point there's a marathon coming up, Carrie.
I reckon we can do it.
I reckon we can do it. I reckon that if we just do this for a couple of weeks, we'll drum up a bit of interest, and we should just list down some of the questions so that we can really go hard on this, because I think it's as you say, this is beautiful that we are each other in this. And if I get to share what I have unraveled and rediscovered and remembered about human nature, and we each share our insights and our curiosities, we do something for ourselves and each other that is during this time just really quite pivotal, really, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So
divine, absolutely divine. But people from all over the beautiful planet tuning in, and we love you so much. And Sovereign and I will be back very soon, and let's get this marathon going, and maybe we can get some of the audience to jump on in and have a little riff with us here and there as well if we're going to do a big marathon session. Would be fun.
Yay. We'll be in touch.
All right. Namaste, everyone. Much love. Bye.